And our next two speakers, Greg Nation and Mark Harris, are uniquely qualified to speak on how the situation will affect us here in Arkansas. Greg Nation has a Bachelor of Degree of Science in Organizational Management from John Brown University. He has served as the Public Transportation Administrator at the Arkansas Department of Transportation for the last 5 years, and I understand is now celebrating his 30th year with the department.
Absolutely.
Mark Harris has a business degree from Kansas State University, and after working as a sales account manager at Eldorado National, the bus manufacturer, and as general manager of the dealership Diamond State Bus Sales, he joined Central State Bus Sales 5 years ago as Director of Commercial Sales. So please welcome Greg and Mark.
Okay, since none of this is going to be good news or great news or make y'all cheer, my job is to defend y'all off of Mark for right now, okay? And I'll let him go into his portion of it, and then
Ann took my little talk.
And I'll follow up with what ARDOT's going to do. Good luck, Mark.
You know, I just wish I had as many degrees as Buster had, and I wouldn't be in this business. So the main thing that I just want to talk about is the shortage and the supply chain issues that we've been going through and how those affect ARDOT, mainly on the rural transit side. So the first thing I think we have to talk about is simply how we got here. And the early months of the COVID pandemic caused automobile manufacturing companies to reduce their capacity and also their orders for microchips. So they took about 80% of those chips off their order bank. And so they canceled orders for this. The microchip manufacturers then had excess inventory and also excess capacity. At the same time, other microchip sectors who use microchips, those businesses exploded. So we had students that were at home doing in-home learning. We had people that were working at home. So there was a huge demand for PCs, tablets, and consumer electronics. I know some school districts had ordered over 35,000 PCs for their students. So the next problem that we had was people sitting at home started buying vehicles. And so Ford, GM, your big automobile manufacturing companies, had a huge demand for people buying vehicles. So they needed the microchips that they had already canceled with the microchip manufacturing companies. Now keep in mind, the microchip manufacturing companies were not real happy with Ford and GM when they canceled all these chips to begin with. They already had demand from the PCs and the tablets, so they told Ford and GM, we'll be glad to put microchips or build you microchips, you're just going to the last of the line. So that's how we got there. The effects that this has had on public transit's been huge. We've talked about Ford and GM. Our primary chassis supplier is Ford, mainly because they meet FTA Buy America requirements. And the two platforms that we use with Ford are the E-Series chassis and the Ford Transits. So Ford now has a crisis on their hands in the fact that they have more demand for their products than what they have supply of microchips. And I'm in constant communication with one of the largest Ford dealers in the country. It's Olathe Ford. They're right out Kansas City, or right outside of Kansas City, Missouri. They largest Ford fleet dealer in the United States. And talking with them the other day, they have admitted that Ford corporate is oversold in their 2022 model year chassis. So right now they have 600,000 municipal orders in-house. And they have told all their Ford dealers they're going to get 15 to 20% of those built. So the 600,000 muni orders, they're going to get built about 120,000 of those units. So here's what it came down to with Ford. It's a gross margin and profitability game, and it just is. With their limited supply of microchips, they have to build their most profitable vehicles first. Their most profitable vehicles are their F-Series pickups, F-150s, F-250s, F-350s. So the majority of the chips went into these particular products that Ford offers. So anyway, they still can't keep up with demand even on their pickups. And so what they did then is they started pre-building pickups without microchips. So there's over 10,000 pickups, maybe a few Explorers in there too, but 10,000 vehicles that have been built minus the microchips. And in the upper Midwest portions of our country, you guys have probably seen the news where all these vehicles are parked, you know, at huge football stadiums in the parking lots, etc. So the goal is once they got the microchips, then they would put them in the vehicles and get them onto the dealers. So good plan, but they didn't get their chips fast enough. So once they hit $1 billion in their finished goods inventory, the stockholders got involved and said, you got to get this stuff sent to the dealers and get it on your accounts receivable. So Ford got with their dealers and said, we have to ship you these pickups and Explorers even though they're not completed. So what they did is they put them on the dealers' floor plan interest, or on their floor plan, and they told the Ford dealers, we will pay you labor and we will pay your floor plan interest once we get you the chips and once you get the chips installed. So Ford's has been in a big bind ever since the chip issue came about. Still doesn't relate to what we do, so I'll just ask the question, does anybody know what Ford's least profitable segment of business is? Yeah, it's the E-Series and it's the Ford Transits. And it's just a fact. Ford doesn't make a lot of margin on the Ford Cutaways, on the E-Series Cutaway or the Ford Transit. Most of the time these are in a bid situation where a low bid type situation wins everything. So they can't make the margin that they can on the F-150s. So bottom line, we're going to be the last group that actually sees chips and gets product from Ford that way. Then we have the Ford allocation process, and this is to the bus and van builders. So it's been a couple of months probably. Ford got with all their pool bus builders, and they're just Ford pool dealers because of the volume that they do as far as ordering chassis with Ford. And they've told all the bus builders you're going to get 15 to 20% of your normal allocation. And normal allocation was simply whatever level they were at before the pandemic hit. So obviously certain companies are bigger than others. Some companies build 10,000 units. They're going to get 2,000. Some companies build 800 buses. They're going to get 160 chassis to build on. So this created a bind with the bus builders. So they have to adjust immediately with their staffing levels to get where they're only getting 20% of their buses built. So they've had to lay off a lot of people, and they have a lot of wasted production spots. So to give you an example, we went from Forest River, which is one of the companies that we represent, StarCraft. Forest River is the parent company. They at one time had 6 factories. They are now down consolidated to 1 factory. And Ann mentioned I work for Eldorado National in Salina, Kansas, which has also become a Forest River dealer. They have shut down the facility. They've let everybody go, and they've actually sold that bus facility. And the same thing happened with Champion Bus, who is in Imlay City, Michigan. They've shut the plant down, let the people go, and have sold the plant. So the bus builders in addition to that, with being at 20% of their normal capacity, they have to build the most profitable pieces of business that they can. And it's unfortunate, but again, we're the least profitable just because this is usually a low bid type situation, and we're dealing with FTA funds, so forth and so on. So the most profitable pieces for a bus company are like a church bus, a college bus, something that FTA funds are not used on. So because of that, we're also probably going to be the last segment that gets built when they do actually get chassis in. So compounding this issue is, and it's been talked about in here, is the $70 billion that the federal government has released, from the CARES Act. And you guys are flush with money, and you'd like to spend it, and you'd like to get equipment, but we have a bottleneck right now. My example is StarCraft, which a lot of you guys have buses on order with me right now. They're going to receive 2,500 chassis from Ford, which is more than anybody else. The problem is, and I shared this with Greg last week, they have a 12,500 unit backlog. So if you just do the math, if things didn't change, it looks like it'll be 4 to 5 years before these buses and or vans will get built. There's going to be some secondary vendor effects on this too. Your seat companies, the AC companies, your interlock company, lift manufacturing companies, fiberglass components, all of these people have had to make adjustments, and they've had to let people go. Most of them, their business is off about 70%. So it's amazing for me to hear everybody talk about people shortages that you guys are having, and at the same time in the bus world, just because of the microchip issues, all these bus manufacturing companies and secondary companies have had to let people go. So, but now we're going to talk about just a little bit different thing. Believe it or not, we do have labor shortages. Northern Indiana, which is the bus/RV capital of the world, and if you've never been up there, it's kind of a neat place. But the RVs, which, you can have a fifth wheel RV that doesn't have a chassis component to it, they're 200,000 units behind. So they're building as many RVs right now as you possibly can. The unemployment rate in northern Indiana is 0.6%. So they can't find enough people. People are driving 2, 3, 4 hours away just to come work there. This is talking with the factories up there. High school dropouts can make $60 to $80 an hour just working online, building an RV. So that's where that is. All your fast food places in northern Indiana, nobody works there. They just can't find the labor. So they're all shut down and have been shut down for basically 18 months. So 2 weeks ago, as a dealer, we hear about how bad things are, and we have enough contacts in the industry. We talk to everybody, but we thought we'd go out and make some visits ourselves. So we went to 3 different, the ownership group of Central States, along with me and Lou Tagliaferro, who has my same job title in Missouri and Illinois. We toured 3 different manufacturing facilities, and everybody's at 10 to 20% capacity. They might have a 100,000 square foot factory that's set up to do 50 buses a week. And I mean, they got one little corner, there's 10 or 15 buses running down the line. So it is the real deal. One factory, they actually set up a ping pong table, so they have ping pong championships during their break. So the effect on the ARDOT order specifically, and that's what I want to talk to you guys about. Ford has informed their Ford dealers and also the bus manufacturing companies that of the orders that they do build for public transit, most of those are going to be the E450s. So the E350s, they're not going to build very many of those chassis. So specifically where that comes into play in Arkansas is the PT 20-05 that a lot of you guys probably have vehicle orders in with me. Probably won't get built at least this year. we still have a shot at some of the E450s, which is the medium duty category. I believe that we're still hoping we're going to get some of those vehicles built. Just a few other things that have maybe affected this a little bit, not quite as significant as what the microchip issue has, but the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Ukraine has suspended the mining operations of neon at 2 different locations, which is a key ingredient in the manufacturing process of a microprocessor chip. So anyway, that's a lot of gloom and doom. Talking with my Ford dealer just 2 days ago, I said, I can't just go talk about gloom and doom to these people. I said, I need something positive. So he goes, here's what they're telling us, and this is Ford Corporate. They're saying that there's going to be improvements in the 3rd and 4th quarter of this year as far as availability of chassis. Ford and GM have both partnered with Intel and to make the chips in the United States. The problem, of course, is it just takes a little while to get a plant up and going and the technical equipment necessary to make a microchip. But nonetheless, they said that in 6 to 9 months, they think that they'll be up and running and hopefully take some pressure off and get us some product. The other thing that's happened, again, this is a long-term solution. It's not a short-term. But the world's largest foundry that makes the microprocessing chips, which is called TSMC, which is Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, they have committed $12 billion to make a factory in Arizona. So 5 years down the road, I'd like to think that we won't have this issue. But again, that's a long-term solution and not long-term, not short-term. Obviously, the Biden administration, they've come up with the Bipartisan Innovation Act, which is investing $52 billion for domestic semiconductor manufacturing. So obviously, we've relied way too much on foreign dependence on these microprocessor chips, and this is going to be shifted back to the United States to some degree. It's just going to take a while to get there. What they're basically telling me, my Ford dealer, and I don't know if he's optimistic or pessimistic, but he says it's going to be 18, 24 months away before we get anywhere back to what he thinks is normal, which, you know, we're all used to it. Me as a bus dealer too. You guys turn an order in, you know, usually 16 to 20 weeks we get you a bus or a van built and to you and delivered to ARDOT. So one other thing that, believe it or not, may help the process, the bottleneck, which is inflation. Inflation would help the labor shortage that's going on in northern Indiana. When you have high fuel prices and rising interest rates, typically people start to stray away from the RVs. But right now, with 200,000 units that they're behind on, it's probably going to take a while to get caught up. But inflation will probably help our situation up in northern Indiana too. So that's pretty much what I have. But I know you guys have questions, and so I kind of wanted to be a little bit short, and you guys can start firing questions at Greg or I. Of course, Adam would be the first one.
But before we get too far along,
yes, I'm sorry.
I want to tell you what ARDOT's doing. So as a state employee, I can do a couple of things, and I kind of learned this from Joel, and hopefully I won't channel my inner Joel. I can be a bureaucrat. I can sit on my damn hands. There you go. And just say, it's too bad, folks. This is the way it is. You got to wait 2 years for your vehicles. Sorry, COVID, blah, blah, blah. Or we can actually do something. So Mark and I talked, and what we'll do as ARDOT, and we'll leave the salesman out of it for a moment, is we use IFB, which means low bid. I'm going to change those to RFPs. I'm going to look at using the producer price index to keep us competitive so that we aren't the low bid, bottom of the line type of thing. I'm going to look at using the GPC, which I just learned about, to see if we can utilize that. Arkansas procurement law is pretty cut and dry. As a state DOT, we are tied to Arkansas procurement law. There's vehicles out there. There's 2 or 3 here. There's 3 or 4 there. I could drive over here, way off, but I really can't due to procurement laws. So there's not a lot. If any salesman tells you he can help you out, Remember, he's a salesman. No offense.
No, none taken.
So salesmen are good with promises, not necessarily so much on delivering. So what we're going to do is change our process. We're delaying some of our bids. We're watching the market. We're watching what's going on. We're checking with our vendors, not just with Central States, where we're looking at with other vendors, make sure they all saying the same thing. I do trust Mark, by the way. He's been excellent. And he also serves on the ATA board. So he can serve a dual role as a salesman and as a confidant from time to time. So what we're going to do is try to change some of those processes. Will it speed everything up? I don't know about that, so I'm not want you to get optimistic about that, but I do want you to know that as the DOT, we are thinking progressively and trying to think outside the box, and we'll see what we can do with Arkansas procurement law to get some of this going. We'll be more competitive with vendors. They won't have to worry so much about that scary moment of like, here's the low bid. Maybe there's a range we can work with, things like that, because the RFP process is a bit more flexible. Still authorized by FTA. We're still following all the rules and regs and prescribed by FTA, so we're doing what we got to do to stay out of trouble. And I don't wear an orange jumpsuit for y'all, even though you're all worth it. Don't get me wrong. For at least 3 or 4 days. Anything longer than that, probably not. But so the DOT is working towards these things like that. So ask your questions. Go ahead. Northwest Arkansas.
First question is for both of you. So from a grants perspective, we have to obligate funds within a certain time frame. And typically, you've given some leeway into how long past the extension of the grant or the end of the grant. But realistically, what kind of a time frame, because Mark and I have had these discussions, I've held off orders. Do we go ahead and put another order in to get a name and a number and place in line? Third quarter, fourth quarter, but realistically, if you look at the orders that are out there now, what kind of time frame are we truly looking at if we put an order in, put a PO in tomorrow? Are we talking 24 months? Are we talking 18 months? Because, I mean, in full-size transit buses, it's 12 to 18 months plus,
Sure.
depending on supplies. Are we looking at that, or are we looking out longer? And the reason I ask that question, because I think we're going to end up being at odds with our FTA partners at some point in time, because our milestone progress reports and all those things aren't adding up to the time frame of when we submitted that project.
Here's, and I don't know that I have your entire answer, but I'll tell you, Greg was talking about GPCs. GPC stands for Government Price Concession, okay? And what I do is, like when ARDOT releases a bid, I take those bid specs, I send them to my bus builder, and I send them to Olathe Ford, which is where I buy my chassis. So anyway, they send it off to Ford Corporate. Ford Corporate assigns a GPC number, which all that is a concession. Hey, we want the state of Arkansas. So back when we bid ARDOT last on the buses, it was bid like in December of 2021, but we had to use model year. Ford goes by nothing but model year. We had to use model year 2022 chassis. Well, they gave me a I have the price of the chassis. They gave me a $5,400 concession per chassis, which I used to tabulate a bid to turn in. So anyway, Ford has always, up until this year, they have always lived, once they assigned a GPC for a model year, even if we did a rollover, they would give me that $5,400. So this year, because Ford, again, let's talk about profitability, let's talk about material costs, everything that's happened to Ford, they said, you know what, here's what we're doing. Of course, we didn't get very many 2022s built anyway. So now we're on the model year 2023. Ford has reduced their GPC to $4,000. So there's $1,400 plus a normal just model year chassis price increase is about $500. Bottom line is it's went up $2,000. And Ford, for the first time, is saying we're not going to honor it. And so that's one area that I had to go talk with Greg, last week about and say, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. So here's my answer to you, Adam. You turn in an order now, today, I think Ford looks at that, and I don't think they've made their final decision on whether they're going to honor. I mean, I just canceled 107 orders in Kentucky over this very issue. Ford said we're not honoring it, and Kentucky said in our bylaws of the state, we can't pay that increase. We would like to, but we can't. Okay. So 107 orders just got canceled. So anyway, I have a feeling Ford's going to look at that and say, this is the ARDOT contract. It was bid in 2021 on a 2022 chassis. What, they can turn in the orders. We're just not going to build them right away. So maybe when prices start to head back down, maybe they will do that. But so now you're talking about 18, 24, months away, maybe 30 months before we get something built.
Right, and that's where, Greg, we're going to, have to have those discussions with FTA because, one, they want us to spend the funds quickly.
Right.
And get them out there. We can obligate them, but it sounds potentially we may be obligating funds on pricing that we truly don't know will be honored come actual delivery.
That's why we're
Yeah.
getting creative with the procurement process within reason what the FTA will allow us to do. The correct answer is we don't have a clue when they're coming in. The only redeeming part of this is FTA, it's a nationwide issue, actually a worldwide issue.
You're right.
Yeah.
And you got to hope, and that's all you have, that the leaders at FTA are well aware of this and the accommodation will come through to allow for some of that. Now, a unified voice speaks the loudest, right? So that means if it comes to this and y'all start having issues, your 5311s, 5307s out there won't necessarily affect the 5310s. We need to be unified in that voice, and the department will be unified with it as long as it's, makes sense with us. We can go for it. Threats, I'm going to call my legislator, I'm going to do this, I know the mayor. That ain't going to help you. None of that's going to help you. They're just not there. They're not there. So all you do is you're just screaming at the wind. But that's okay if you want to do that. We're here for that. But it won't do you any good.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a waste of your time and energy. I think with the process we're going with the RFP, our relationship with Region 6 and their ability to accommodate us, I think we can utilize some of that and with the situation going on. But it's all I think we can be okay. Because as long as we obligate the funds, the clock does start ticking, we can anticipate, and it's all about your risk tolerance, y'all. It really is about your risk tolerance. If your risk tolerance is not there, maybe you should bail out. If it's there, ride with us, because we don't know. It is unknown. We just have to give it a good shot and go. I'd love to sit down here and give you some facts, numbers, dates, and all that, but there's absolutely no way to do that. I've got 225 vehicles in order, about to order 200 more. If 425 vehicles doesn't flex the salesman's muscle and worries him more than it excites him, that means there's a problem. Because anytime a salesman tells you, I don't buy no more, what does that tell you? So you have to listen. So I go out and do my research. We go out and do our research. Our staff does the research. And it's true. It's absolutely legitimate. We can't go, let's just use another bus manufacturer because everything will be fine. That is not the case whatsoever. So I don't know what to tell you, but other than we're working at it, and we will definitely do our due diligence and then some to ensure that we get this thing straightened out as fast as possible. And when they start flowing in, because it's going to be raining buses. Yeah. Was that Gloria Gainerbrook who's raining in? Is that what it is? Or? No, okay. Well, it's going to be raining buses in the next 18, 24 months. All right. So that's what we're hoping.
Well, just follow up. So my question is, those 18 to 24 months are with the existing orders.
I would say that.
Hopefully to meet the existing orders, not necessarily any new orders.
I'm going to answer it this way, just because of what my Olathe Ford dealer told me. He said third and fourth quarter, which, everything that Arkansas has has ordered, I have turned in. I turned in literally within days, 2 or 3 days. So those are, there's agencies here that have had a vehicle on order for, 9 to 12 months now. But anyway, so if I listen to him correctly, and he says third and fourth quarter, there's going to be an improvement. I believe that. I just don't know how big of an improvement. We have a bus manufacturing company that's going to get 2,500 chassis, and they have a backlog of 12,500. I don't know where all the ARDOT orders are in line with the other orders that have been turned in across the country.
I think we're sitting on 14 months out.
I believe that.
Yep.
This is a perfect example too of just Adam turned in 2 orders at the very same time. And as a matter of fact, I turned it in as a 2-bus order to the factory, even though there were separate POs. I just turned it in as a 2-bus, it was a 2-van order. I got one. I've already delivered it to Adam. The other one don't have a serial number, nothing. So Ford just, I can't explain it, and nobody can. They're building some, and then they're not building some.
Yeah.
Real quick crystal
Yes.
ball question, 23, 24 models, what percentage increase will you see on those?
30.
30? Okay, that's kind of what I figured. And then second statement, Greg, if you need me to lead a letter writing campaign to our legislators to talk about changing the procurement process, by all means, let's get together as agencies and contact our people, and let's change the procurement process.
Yeah, it may resort to that. And one last thing I'd like to say to our 5310 agencies, and nothing against, I'm going to pick on Stephanie at SEAT. SEAT's got 30 vehicles in order. When we place your orders and they start coming in, they're assigned VIN numbers. So if you're Sevier County and you're getting one vehicle and you're like, oh, SEAT's ordering 30, that doesn't mean anything to me. It means absolutely nothing. Your order came in at a certain time, your order will go out in the order that it came in. There will be no juggling around to help out. And Stephanie, I know you would never do this to anybody. There's no be juggling to make the bigger agencies happy. I personally don't care. You're all suffering for vehicles. If I give somebody a bunch and hold back on somebody else, I still create the same problem that we have. And if any of y'all know me, I absolutely do not do that. So as a smaller 5310 agency, do not be concerned that you'll be shuffled to the very bottom of the deck because you ordered one vehicle or anything like that, because it doesn't matter the number of vehicles to me. No offense again, I'm not a salesman. I could care less. All my care is that you get your vehicle so that you can serve your clients as you've been doing, and that's all that matters to us. My staff will ring that out too. We care about what y'all do, and it matters to us. So that's that.
Well, now that I
Any more
know the
questions?
secret too from Buster this last time, I promise you there's been a lot of stress in being a bus dealer or a bus manufacturer at this point. I'm going to be doing figure 8s with my tongue on the roof of my mouth.
And then one day I'm gonna be doing figure 8s with your vehicles in our driveway as the test. That's gonna be great.
I'll have one, I'll speak my last promise, but
Go ahead.
in relations to TAM plan and targets, this is going to drastically change those dynamics and what those targets would be. Maybe from an ARDOT perspective, maybe we could work together on consensus of what that needs to be, or at least that blurb in these TAM plans, because looking at a 36-month plus cycle, that we're going to now potentially have to be reporting that we're running vehicles longer that are quote unquote unsafe because of length of time and service and things like
They're
that.
useful life benefits. It's going to extend out.
Right.
My focus would be on preventive maintenance, maintenance, and maintenance.
We're
because-
putting $10,000 into rebuilding in El Dorado because the floor is
Yep,
gone.
I
And we
understand
wouldn't
that.
normally do it because it's actually supposed to be gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So.
That's the same with our facility too. I mean, as far as our backups, we're down one of our good buses that may have to do an engine repair on it, and our 3 backups, we're getting maybe 2 days and we're having to put them in the shop. So, I mean, we're hurting pretty bad.
Yeah.
I mean, we're putting a lot more money in buses that, I mean, especially for our facility, we're putting a lot of extra money out to try to fix up these older buses, and it's kind of a gamble. Do we really want to sink the money in, or do we not? So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big gamble.
It's exactly what it is, and that goes back to your risk tolerance. I mean, eventually you just know I can't do this anymore, but you're stuck with it that I have to. I empathize. I wish we could do more, but the market just won't let us. We're trying to be creative and do what the state can, and I think as a state agency, we're trying to be a very, very flexible, but still keep it between the ditches that FTA wants us to do. And I'm willing to go to bat for anybody with FTA, any agencies. As far as 5310, y'all don't deal with FTA that much, but know that we do talk with them. We have a great relationship with them. We can sometimes get concessions, sometimes we can't. Sometimes their hands are tied at the national level. Sometimes the bureaucracy of government just ties you up sometimes. But we plan on getting through all that and making it through. And
I
come to
certainly,
creative.
after talking with Greg last week too, I appreciate his sincere efforts in working with us and trying to get there. That's all we can do. But he's a good leader for your organization. I mean, he's willing to think outside the box, and then we're just in times right now you have to think outside the box or it's not going to happen.
Well, I'm going to let Ann introduce John.